Why does she have that bracelet? In the mind of John Delacroix, a mute man who has just escaped a difficult situation with the help of Kalila Jackson, a 29-year-old black undercover cop. And when John discovers a silver bracelet on Kalila's wrist, engraved with numbers and eerily identical to the one worn by his late brother Mason, everything changes. Why would Mason, John Delacroix's brother, a cop who died in an apparent suicide, keep a secret from Kalila? What dangerous truths are hidden in those numbers? Buckle up for a story of betrayal, murder, and a gambling empire that threatens to destroy everything. Where are you watching and what time is it? Click subscribe to never miss our latest stories. Stay tuned. The light of justice will bury every dark, evil secret. The air inside Bayou Bistro, a weathered diner tucked just beyond the chaos of New Orleans International Airport, was thick with the scent of fried shrimp and the low hum of frustrated travelers. It was a late afternoon in the Crescent City, the sky outside bruised with storm clouds that had grounded flights for hours. Kalila Jackson, 29, leaned against a sticky vinyl booth, her leather jacket creaking as she adjusted the silver bracelet on her wrist. The bracelet, engraved with the cryptic numbers 294813, was a gift from Mason Delacroix, her late partner and lover, given in a fleeting moment of tenderness before his death a year ago. She traced the numbers absently, her sharp brown eyes scanning the crowd. As an undercover NOPD detective, Kalila was used to reading rooms, but today she was off duty, stranded by a delayed flight to Miami for a sting operation. The diner buzzed with discontent, families bickered over cold fries, businessmen barked into phones, and the jukebox churned out a tinny jazz tune that did little to soothe the tension. Kalila's badge, tucked beneath her jacket, felt like a secret weight. She was here to meet a contact, a low-level informant, who'd promised intel on a smuggling ring, but he was a no-show. Her phone vibrated with a flight update, another 2-hour delay. She sighed, resigned to the wait, and pushed her empty coffee mug aside. The diner was a sea of faces, each one etched with impatience, and every table was claimed. She was about to settle for a spot at the bar when a commotion at the hostess stand caught her attention. A man in a tailored navy blazer stood there, his hands moving in rapid, precise gestures. American Sign Language, Kalila recognized instantly. His hazel eyes, framed by a strong jaw and salt and pepper hair, flashed with barely contained frustration. The receptionist, a young woman with a name tag reading Tammy, was unraveling under the pressure of the dinner rush. Her ponytail bobbed as she snapped, "Sir, I don't have time for this nonsense. Write it down or step aside." The man's shoulders stiffened, his hands pausing mid-sign, and for a moment, the air between them crackled with unspoken anger. Kalila's instincts kicked in. She'd grown up signing with her deaf cousin, learning the language before she could even speak full sentences. Without hesitation, she slid from her booth and approached, her boots clicking on the linoleum floor. Her hands moved fluidly as she signed. "Can I help?" The man's gaze snapped to her, surprise softening his features. Relief washed over his face like a tide, and he signed back. "Thank you. I'm John Delacroix, owner of Lake and Flame. Just sorting a table issue. My flight's delayed." Kalila turned to Tammy, her voice calm but firm. "He's trying to fix a reservation mix-up. Can you check for John Delacroix?" Tammy's scowl faltered, her cheeks flushing as she realized her mistake. She muttered an apology and fumbled with the reservation book, confirming John's table near the window. Kalila translated the exchange, her hands a graceful bridge between John's silence and the receptionist's flustered response. The crowd around them seemed to fade, their focus narrowing to this small act of understanding. John gestured to the newly secured table, its formica surface gleaming under fluorescent lights, with a view of the airport runways where planes sat idle under the storm. "Join me?" he signed, his expression earnest. "It's the least I can do." Kalila hesitated, her mind flicking to the case file in her bag, the one she'd planned to review during the delay. But there was something in John's eyes, a vulnerability. Beneath his polished exterior, that tugged at her. "Sure," she said, sliding her bag onto her shoulder and following him to the table. They settled across from each other, the window framing the distant flicker of runway lights. A waiter dropped off menus and Kalila ordered a shrimp po' boy, while John pointed to the same, signing his thanks. As the waiter left, John's hands moved again, slower now, deliberate. I lost my voice 6 months ago, poisoned, believe it or not, by a syndicate targeting my restaurants. Kalila's eyebrows rose, but she kept her expression neutral, her cop instincts cataloging every word. Lake and Flame, she knew, was a rising star in New Orleans' culinary scene, a chain that had grown from a single food truck to a string of upscale Creole eateries. Poisoning sounded like something out of her case files, not a restaurateur's life. "That's intense," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I'm a detective, so I've seen some wild stuff, but that's next level." She omitted her undercover work, keeping her cover intact. John's eyes lit with curiosity, his hands signing, "Detective? Ever take down a kingpin?" A smirk tugged at Kalila's lips. "A few. It's less glamorous than the movies, more paperwork than car chases." John's shoulders shook with a silent laugh, a warmth spreading across his face that made the diner feel less oppressive. "Your hands tell stories," he signed, his gaze lingering on her bracelet. The silver caught the light, the engraved numbers, glinting like a secret code. "Where'd you learn to sign?" Kalila's fingers brushed the bracelet, a reflex born of memory. "My cousin's deaf," she said. "I learned signing before talking. It's like breathing to me." John nodded, impressed, and shared that his chain now hired ex-cons, giving them a second chance through culinary training. His passion for redemption was palpable, his hands moving with a fervor that drew Kalila in. The po' boys arrived, steaming and piled high with crispy shrimp. Between bites, they traded stories. John about a disastrous opening night at Lake and Flame's first location, Kalila about a stakeout gone comically wrong. The storm outside raged on, rain lashing the windows, but inside, their corner felt like a sanctuary. Kalila found herself relaxing, a rare occurrence for someone who lived. With one eye on the exit, John's humor, conveyed through expressive signs and wry smiles, was disarming, and she caught herself wondering about the man behind the polished blazer. As the diner emptied, travelers drifting to their gates or resigned to airport lounges, John hesitated, his hands hovering before signing, "I'm in town tomorrow. Dinner at Lake and Flame's flagship on Bourbon Street, 7 o'clock? His eyes held a mix of hope and uncertainty, as if he expected rejection. Kalila's instinct was to decline. Her life was a tangle of undercover ops and secrets. But something about John, perhaps the echo of Mason in his earnestness, made her pause. 7 o'clock, she said, her smile genuine. "Don't be late." John's face lit up, and he signed, "Deal." They rose, gathering their things, and Kalila felt the weight of the bracelet again, its numbers a quiet mystery she hadn't yet unraveled. As they parted ways, John toward the airport's private lounge, Kalila back to her gate. The storm seemed to hush, the rain softening to a drizzle. She glanced back once, catching John's silhouette against the neon glow of Bayou Bistro, unaware that this chance encounter was the first thread in a tapestry of secrets, danger, and a truth that would bind them in ways neither could imagine. The neon glow of Bourbon Street pulsed outside Lake and Flame's flagship restaurant, a beacon of Creole elegance amid New Orleans' raucous nightlife. Inside, the air was warm with the scent of blackened redfish and the soft clink of wine glasses. The dining room, a tapestry of polished wood and flickering candlelight. John Delacroix sat at a corner table, his tailored blazer catching the glow of a chandelier. His hazel eyes scanned the entrance, a mix of anticipation and nerves betraying the calm he projected. It was 7 o'clock sharp, and Kalila Jackson, the undercover cop who'd bridged his silence with her fluent sign language, at Bayou Bistro yesterday, was due any moment. Kalila stepped through the door, her presence commanding the room. Her sleek black dress hugged her frame, braids swept into an elegant updo, and the silver bracelet on her wrist, engraved with the numbers 294813, glinted as she moved. A gift from Mason Delacroix, her late lover and partner. It was a quiet reminder of a love cut short by his supposed suicide a year ago. She spotted John, and a smile softened her sharp features, though her cop's instincts kept her gaze sweeping the room. Bourbon Street was a magnet for trouble, and Kalila never fully let her guard down. John rose, his hands signing a warm greeting. "You look stunning." Kalila's smile widened and she signed back, "Not bad yourself." They settled at the table, the city's chaos muffled by thick velvet curtains framing a view of the street's revelry. A waiter, clearly trained to accommodate John's needs, took their orders, crab cakes for her, étouffée for him, with a nod to Kalila's quick translation. As the waiter departed, John's hands moved with purpose. "This place is my pride and joy. Started as a food truck, now it's feeding half the city." His silent laugh, a subtle shake of his shoulders, was infectious. Kalila leaned forward, intrigued. "You've built something real here," she said, her voice low to match the intimate hum of the restaurant. "Not easy with a syndicate breathing. Down your neck." John's expression darkened briefly, his hands signing. "They tried to break me, poisoned me to shut me up, but I'm still here." Kalila's eyes narrowed, her detective's mind filing away the detail. Poison wasn't a casual weapon. It spoke of power and precision, the kind she chased in her undercover ops. She shared a sanitized story of a recent bust, careful to omit her covert work. "Got a dealer once who thought he could outrun me," she said, smirking. "He didn't." John's hands danced with curiosity. "You're fearless. My brother Mason would have loved that. He was a cop too until he died last year." The name hit Kalila like a punch, her fork pausing mid-air. Her heart thudded, memories of Mason, his intense brown eyes, his rare laughter, flooding back. They'd been partners and lovers for 2 years, their relationship a secret to protect, their careers. His suicide had never felt right, a wound she carried alongside the bracelet he'd given her. "Mason Delacroix?" she asked, her voice tight, barely above a whisper. John nodded, puzzled. "You knew him?" His hands slowed, sensing her shift. Kalila swallowed, her mind racing. Mason had never mentioned a brother, just as he'd kept her hidden from his personal life. The realization stung, a fresh cut over an old scar. "We worked together," she said, the half-truth heavy on her tongue. She couldn't reveal their love, not yet, not to this man she'd only just met. John's gaze dropped to her wrist, his eyes narrowing. "That bracelet, it's like one Mason wore. Where'd you get it?" Kalila's breath caught, her fingers instinctively brushing the silver. The numbers gleamed, a cipher she hadn't yet cracked. "He gave it to me," she admitted, her voice barely steady. "Before he died." John's hands froze, his expression a storm of shock and curiosity. "He never mentioned you," he signed, almost to himself. "Not once." The words landed like a blow, confirming Mason's secrecy ran deeper than she'd feared. The crab cakes arrived, their golden crust a stark contrast to the tension at the table. Kalila forced a bite, the flavors lost to the churn of her thoughts. John's hands moved again, tentative now. "Mason was my best friend, despite our fights. His death broke me. I've kept his apartment untouched, like a memorial." He paused, then signed, "Would you come see it? Maybe you knew a side of him I didn't." Kalila's instinct was to refuse. Stirring up Mason's ghost was dangerous, emotionally and otherwise. But the bracelet felt heavier, its numbers a silent demand. For answers. "Okay," she said, her voice resolute. "Let's go." They finished their meal in near silence, the easy banter of earlier replaced by a shared wait. John paid the bill, waving off Kalila's offer to split it, and they stepped into the humid night. Bourbon Street pulsed with laughter and brass bands, but Kalila's focus was inward, her cop's senses heightened. The Marigny, where Mason's apartment waited, was a short drive away. John's sleek black SUV idled at the curb, his driver, a burly man with a discreet earpiece, ready to navigate the city's labyrinthine streets. As they drove, Kalila stole glances at John. His profile, strong and thoughtful, echoed Mason's in subtle ways. The curve of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. But where Mason had been all restless energy, John carried a quiet resilience. The bracelet caught the streetlights, its numbers glinting like a beacon. Mason had given it to her one rainy night. John's presence. Urgent. Keep this safe, Kalila. It's more than it seems. She'd thought it a lover's token, not a key to something darker. The SUV pulled up to a quiet Marigny street, the apartment building a faded Creole gem with wrought iron balconies. John led the way, his hands signing directions to the third floor. The hallway smelled of old wood and jasmine, a scent that tugged at Kalila's memories of late-night visits to Mason. Inside, the apartment was a shrine, police commendations, framed on the walls, jazz records stacked by a vintage turntable, a faint layer of dust marking time's passage. Kalila's chest tightened as she spotted a photo of Mason, his smile rare and unguarded. John gestured to a desk in the corner, its locked drawer a relic of their casework days. He kept everything here, he signed. Kalila's fingers found a hairpin in her bag, her hands steady despite the tremor in her heart. The lock clicked open, revealing a leather journal, a USB drive, and documents labeled Syndicate. Her breath hitched as she flipped the journal's pages, Mason's tight handwriting detailing a gambling ring run by their cousin, Grayson Delacroix. Notes about a poisoned threat sent a chill down her spine. Kalila closed the journal, her eyes meeting John's. The bracelet's numbers burned in her mind, a clue Mason had left her, now tying her to this man and his brother's hidden life. She clutched the evidence, unaware that this discovery was only the first step into a web of danger, one that would test her courage and unravel the truths Mason had died to protect. The air in Mason Delacroix's Marigny apartment was thick with the ghosts of memory, the faint scent of jasmine and old wood clinging to every surface. Kalila Jackson stood frozen, her fingers clutching the leather journal she'd pried from the locked desk drawer. Its pages, scrawled with Mason's tight handwriting, laid bare a chilling truth. A gambling ring orchestrated by their cousin, Grayson Delacroix, fueled by bribes and blood. Beside her, John Delacroix stared at the documents labeled Syndicate and the USB drive, his hazel eyes wide with disbelief. The silver bracelet on Kalila's wrist, engraved with the numbers 294813, a gift from Mason before his supposed suicide, felt like a lead weight, its cryptic digits now a key to a dangerous puzzle. The apartment, a shrine to Mason's life with its commendations and jazz records, seemed to close in around them, the silence heavy with unspoken questions. Kalila's phone buzzed on the desk, shattering the stillness. She grabbed it, her cops, instincts flaring as an unknown number flashed on the screen. The message was stark, its words slicing through the quiet. Return the bracelet and files or end like Mason. Her pulse quickened, a cold dread coiling in her gut. She locked eyes with John, her voice a low hiss. We're not alone. His hands, trembling but swift, signed, "What does it mean?" Kalila shoved the journal, USB, and documents into her bag, her movements precise despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. "It means we're in deep," she whispered, "and someone's watching." Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, heavy and deliberate, the kind that belonged to men with purpose and weapons. Kalila's training kicked in, her mind racing. Through escape routes. The apartment's front door was no option. It would lead straight into the intruder's path. She scanned the room, her gaze landing on a utility closet tucked behind a faded armchair. Mason had once shown her its secret during a late-night case review, a relic of the building's Creole architecture. "This way," she said, yanking, opened the closet door to reveal a narrow service elevator, its rusted panel barely visible in the dim light. John hesitated, his hands signing. "Will it hold us?" The footsteps grew louder, now just beyond the apartment door, accompanied by the low murmur of voices. "It better," Kalila snapped, shoving him toward the elevator. She jabbed the call button, the ancient mechanism groaning to life with agonizing slowness. The apartment door shuddered under a heavy blow, wood splintering as the intruders forced their way in. Kalila's heart pounded, her hand hovering over the backup pistol strapped beneath her jacket. But she knew a firefight would be suicide. They needed to vanish. The elevator doors creaked open, and Kalila pushed John inside, his tailored blazer catching on the rusted edge. She slammed the down button, the doors closing just as the apartment door gave way with a final crack. The elevator lurched downward, its cables whining, carrying them into the building's underbelly. In the dim glow of a flickering bulb, Kalila checked her phone. No signal, but the message burned in her mind. End like Mason. The words confirmed what she'd long suspected. Mason's death was no suicide. Her bracelet glinted, its numbers, a silent accusation. Mason had known he was in danger, and he'd left her the key to unravel it. John's hands moved, urgent. Who's after us? Kalila shook her head, her voice low. Grayson or his people? The journal mentions a poisoned threat. Same as what happened to you. John's face paled, his hands signing. Grayson? Our cousin. The elevator hit the garage level, the doors opening to a cavernous space smelling of oil and concrete. Kalila peered out, her senses on high alert. The garage was empty, but the distant hum of an engine suggested pursuit wasn't far behind. We move fast, she said, leading John toward a side exit. They slipped into the humid New Orleans. Night, the Marigny's quiet streets a stark contrast to Bourbon's chaos. Kalila's SUV, parked a block away, was their lifeline. She kept John close, his steps quick despite the shock etched on his face. As they reached the vehicle, she scanned for tails. Nothing, for now. They climbed in, Kalila gunning the engine, and weaving through the city's maze, her eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. John's hands signed, "Where are we going?" "A safe house in Algiers," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "NOPD property, off the grid." The drive across the Mississippi was a blur, the Crescent City Connection Bridge glowing under sodium lights. Kalila's mind churned, piecing together the journal's fragments. Mason had been tracking Grayson's gambling empire, a network of rigged bets and laundered money, implicating city council members. The Syndicate documents were meticulous, detailing bribes funneled through fake charities, but it was the USB that held her attention. She needed a secure system to access it, and the safe house was their best shot. The Algiers safe house was a nondescript Creole cottage, its peeling paint and overgrown yard a deliberate disguise. Kalila parked in the alley, ushering John inside. Through a back door. The interior was sparse, bare walls, a single table, and a dusty laptop wired to a secure line. She locked the door, her pistol now in hand as she swept the rooms. Clear. John sank into a chair, his hands signing. What now? Kalila set her bag on the table, pulling out the journal, USB, and documents. "We dig," she said, her voice resolute. "Mason left this for a reason." She opened the journal, her fingers trembling as she read aloud a chilling entry. Grayson's men poisoned John to silence him. "My death won't be suicide." John's hands froze mid-air, his face a mask of horror. "Murdered," he signed, the word sharp. Kalila nodded, her throat tight. He knew they were coming for him. "The bracelet, he gave it to me weeks before he died, said it was more than it seems. I thought it was just a gift." She touched the silver, its numbers glinting. Under the safe house's dim bulb, Kalila plugged the USB into the laptop, its screen flickering to life. The drive held audio files and she clicked one, Grayson's voice crackling through the speakers. "Eliminate loose ends, Mason's digging too deep, and John's asking questions." The cold calculation in his tone sent a shiver down her spine. Another file listed transactions, millions laundered through shell companies, names of council members attached. John's hands signed, "This is bigger than us." "Yeah," Kalila murmured, "and someone wants it buried." She studied the bracelet, its numbers 294813 nagging at her. They weren't random, Mason was too precise. Her cop's intuition screamed coordinates, a lead to something bigger, but she needed a GPS to confirm. The safe house's laptop wasn't equipped for that, and every minute here felt like borrowed time. John's hands moved, urgent. "What's our next move?" Kalila met his gaze, her resolve hardening. "We follow Mason's trail wherever it leads, but we stay sharp. Grayson's not done hunting." The safe house's silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant wail of a siren. Kalila's fingers lingered on the bracelet, Mason's final gift, now a lifeline to his truth. She and John were bound by his secrets, their lives entwined in a fight they hadn't chosen. Outside, the Mississippi flowed, its dark waters hiding dangers yet to surface. But for now, they were safe, alive, armed with evidence, and one step closer to unraveling the conspiracy that had claimed Mason's life. The Algiers safe house was a fortress of shadows, its bare walls and flickering bulb offering little solace against the chilling truth Kalila Jackson and John Delacroix had unearthed. The leather journal, USB drive, and documents labeled Syndicate lay spread across the table, a damning exposé of Grayson Delacroix's gambling empire and the murder of Mason, John's brother, and Kalila's secret love. Kalila's silver bracelet, engraved with the numbers 294813, a gift from Mason before his staged suicide, gleamed under the dim light, its digits now confirmed as coordinates to a cabin in the Atchafalaya Basin, 2 hours from New Orleans. The air crackled with the threat of pursuit. The anonymous text, "Return the bracelet and files or end like Mason," still searing Kalila's mind. She zipped her leather jacket, her cop's resolve hardening against the fear clawing at her core. John sat across from her, his tailored blazer creased from their desperate escape, his hazel eyes locked on the journal. His hands, usually fluid, in sign language, were clenched, still. "We're really doing this?" he signed, the question laced with dread. Kalila met his gaze, her voice unwavering. "We have to. Mason left those numbers for a reason. Whatever's at that cabin, it's our next move." John nodded, his jaw tight, the weight of betrayal etched into his features. The safe house's silence was suffocating, pierced only by the distant murmur of the Mississippi, a reminder of the world poised to engulf them. Kalila snatched the keys to the borrowed SUV, a nondescript vehicle stashed for NOPD operations. She packed the evidence into a backpack, her backup pistol a steadying presence at her hip. John followed, his steps deliberate, as if bracing for a storm. They slipped out the back door, the Algiers night cool and heavy with the scent of river mud. Kalila scanned the alley, no headlights, no shadows stirring. She started the engine, the SUV growling to life, and peeled onto the road. New Orleans. Neon fading as they crossed the Crescent City Connection Bridge. The Mississippi churned below, its inky waters mirroring the uncertainty ahead. The highway stretched beyond the city, a thin thread slicing through marshlands where cypress trees loomed, their branches draped in Spanish moss like ghostly veils. Kalila gripped the wheel, one hand brushing the bracelet. Mason's voice haunted her, urgent and cryptic. "Keep this safe, Kalila. It's more than it seems." She'd worn it daily, a token of love, never imagining it was a map to his final gambit. John's hands broke her thoughts, signing sharply. Mason never mentioned a cabin, not once. Kalila's voice softened, carrying her own pain. "He kept secrets, John, from both of us, but he trusted us to find this." The road narrowed, asphalt giving way to gravel as they plunged into the Atchafalaya Basin. The swamp enveloped them, its dense canopy swallowing the stars, the air thick with cicadas' drone, and the occasional splash of unseen life. The SUV's headlights carved a fragile path, illuminating gnarled roots and glinting water. Kalila's senses sharpened, the isolation screaming trap. She glanced at John, his face etched in the dashboard's glow, resolute yet shadowed by fear. "We're close," she said, checking the GPS. The device pinged, marking a dirt track, veering left into the swamp's heart. The track was a brutal maze of ruts and mud, the SUV lurching with every jolt. Kalila's heart raced, the memory of the splintering apartment door still raw. John's hand signed, What if they're waiting? Her jaw clenched. Then we outsmart them. Mason didn't lead us here to die. Her words were a lifeline, anchoring them against the creeping dread. The trees parted, revealing a clearing where a weathered shack stood, its wooden exterior silvered by time. Solar panels caught the moonlight's edge, a testament to Mason's meticulous foresight. Kalila cut. The engine, the swamp's chorus flooding the silence. She stepped out, boots sinking into damp earth, and signaled John to stay put. "Let me check first," she said, her pistol drawn low. John's hands signed a quick "be careful," his eyes fixed on her. The cabin's porch groaned under her weight, the air thick with decay and pine. She found a hollow log by the steps, her fingers brushing a concealed key, Mason's signature, a trick from their shared safe houses. The lock clicked, the door creaking inward. The interior was stark, a single room with a cot, wood stove, and a scarred table. Dust swirled in Kalila's flashlight beam, the space untouched for months. No signs of disturbance, no traps. She waved John in, steadying him over the porch's uneven boards. His blazer snagged on a splinter, but he brushed it off, signing, "This is Mason's?" Kalila nodded, her throat tight. His sanctuary, hidden from the world. The room echoed Mason's. Precision, austere yet purposeful. A refuge for his final stand. Kalila's gaze caught a fishing map tacked above the table, its edges too crisp for the cabin's neglect. She lifted it, revealing a digital safe embedded in the wood, its keypad faintly aglow. John's hands signed. The bracelet's numbers? Her pulse surged. She entered 294813, the digits Mason had etched into her life. The safe beeped, its lock releasing with a soft click. Inside lay a waterproof case, heavy with promise. Betting ledgers, photographs of Grayson with corrupt officials, a voice recorder. Atop it all was a sealed envelope, addressed in Mason's handwriting, to John and Kalila. Kalila's hands shook as she held the envelope, its weight more than paper. John's eyes met hers, a silent pact forged in shared loss. Mason had foreseen their arrival, trusted them to carry his fight. The swamp outside thrummed, its ancient secrets dwarfing the conspiracy they'd uncovered. But the cabin stood as a fragile bastion, a spark of hope in the darkness. Kalila clutched the envelope, unaware that its contents would thrust them deeper, into a web of betrayal, where every step forward risked everything they held dear. The cabin in the Atchafalaya Basin stood like a forgotten sentinel, its weathered walls cloaked in the swamp's damp embrace. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the weight of secrets, the single room lit only by Kalila Jackson's flashlight and the faint glow of a solar-powered bulb. Kalila stood before the open safe, her silver bracelet, engraved with the numbers, 294813, a gift from her late lover, Mason Delacroix, catching the light as her trembling hands held a sealed envelope addressed to John and Kalila. John Delacroix, his tailored blazer dusted with the swamp's grit, leaned forward, his hazel eyes locked on the envelope, a mix of dread and hope etched into his features. The waterproof case beside it brimmed with evidence. Betting ledgers, photographs, a voice recorder, all part of the Syndicate file exposing Grayson Delacroix's gambling empire. But it was Mason's handwriting, precise and haunting, that held them captive, a voice from beyond the grave. Kalila's heart pounded, the memory of their frantic journey from the Algiers safe house still raw. The anonymous threat, return the bracelet and files or end like Mason, had driven them here, to this hidden refuge where Mason had stashed his final truth. She tore open the envelope, her fingers steady despite the storm in her chest, and unfolded the letter, its pages creased but pristine. John's hands, usually fluid in sign language, hovered, urging her to read. The swamp outside thrummed with cicadas, a deceptive lull that masked the danger lurking beyond the trees. Kalila's voice, low and reverent, filled the cabin as she began. If you're reading this together, you found each other in the truth. John, my brother, I hid Kalila to protect you both. Kalila, you were my heart. But I couldn't. Risk you in Grayson's crosshairs. I gave you the bracelet as a failsafe. Its numbers lead here. Grayson's gambling ring funds a criminal empire, bleeding millions through rigged bets and bribes to council members. Expose it. Trust Captain Torres, she's clean. I'm sorry for the secrets, I loved you both, Mason. The words landed like a blow, each sentence a shard of Mason's soul laid bare. Kalila's throat tightened, tears stinging her eyes as she reread the line. You were my heart. Mason had loved her fiercely, yet kept her from John, his brother. In a web of compartments she was only now unraveling. John's hand signed, slow and heavy. He wanted us to finish this. His eyes glistened. The pain of Mason's loss mirrored in Kalila's own. She nodded, her voice cracking. He knew we'd get here, he trusted us. The safe's contents spilled across the table, a grim catalog of Grayson's sins. The ledgers detailed transactions, millions laundered through fake charities, names of corrupt officials scrawled in Mason's meticulous hand. The photographs showed Grayson shaking hands with council members, their smiles cold and calculated. Kalila picked up the voice recorder, her thumb hesitating over the play button. She pressed it, and Grayson's voice, smooth and venomous, crackled. Through the cabin. Mason's digging too deep. Stage it as a suicide. John's next if he doesn't back off. The confirmation of Mason's murder hit like a physical force, Kalila's breath catching as John's fists clenched, his silent rage palpable. Kalila's mind raced, piecing together Mason's plan. The bracelet given to her in a rain-soaked moment weeks before his death wasn't just a token. It was a lifeline. Its numbers a map to this cabin. This evidence. Mason had known Grayson's reach, had anticipated his own end, and yet he'd fought to the last, leaving them the tools. To bring his killer down, she touched the bracelet, its silver warm against her skin, a tether to the man she'd loved and lost. John's hands signed. He was protecting us, even then. Kalila's voice was barely a whisper. And we'll protect his legacy. The cabins. Solitude felt fragile. The swamp's chorus a thin veil over the danger they'd evaded in New Orleans. Kalila's cop instincts screamed to move, to secure the evidence before Grayson's men traced them. She began packing the ledgers and recorder into the waterproof case, her movement swift but deliberate. John helped, his hands steady despite the grief etched into his face. The photographs, stark evidence of corruption, were last, their glossy surfaces reflecting the bulb's faint light. Kalila's fingers lingered on one, a shot of Grayson at a gala, his smirk a chilling echo of the voice on the recorder. A sudden flash pierced the cabin's window, twin beams of light cutting through the swamp's darkness. Kalila froze, her heart lurching as the low rumble of engines broke the cicada's drone. Headlights, she hissed, dropping to a crouch. John followed, his hand signing. They found us? Kalila's flashlight clicked off, plunging the cabin into near darkness. She peered through a crack in the curtains, her pulse hammering. Two trucks, their silhouettes hulking against the trees, rolled into the clearing, their engines idling. With menace. Grayson's men, she whispered, the threat from the text now a reality. Kalila's mind raced through options, fight, hide, or flee. The cabin was a death trap, its single door no match for armed pursuers. Her eyes darted to the floor, catching a faint seam beneath a threadbare rug. She yanked it back, revealing a trap door, its edges nearly invisible. Back door, she hissed, prying it open with her nails. A narrow tunnel yawned below, its earthen walls damp and claustrophobic. John's hands signed. Will it hold? The truck's doors slammed outside, footsteps crunching on the gravel. It has to, Kalila snapped, shoving the waterproof case into a backpack. She helped John to the trap door, his blazer snagging on the rough edge. The tunnel was barely wide enough for them, its ceiling low, forcing Kalila to hunch. She grabbed the envelope, tucking it inside her jacket. Mason's words too precious to risk. The trapdoor closed behind them with a muffled thud, just as the cabin's front door splintered under a heavy blow. Kalila's flashlight beam danced across the tunnel's walls, revealing a path stretching into darkness. John's hands brushed. Her arms, signing, "We're in this together." She nodded, her resolve steeling. For Mason. They crawled forward, the damp earth cold against their hands, the tunnel's silence broken only by their ragged breaths and the muffled chaos above. Voices barked in the cabin, furniture crashing as Grayson's men tore through Mason's sanctuary. Kalila's heart pounded, the weight of the evidence and Mason's letter anchoring her against the fear. The swamp's embrace was both a shield and a cage, hiding them, but offering no mercy. They emerged in a thicket 200 yards away, the cabin's lights now a distant glow through the trees. Kalila clutched the backpack, Mason's final message burning in her chest, a call to justice that would lead them into a fight they could not yet fathom. The Atchafalaya Basin's thicket was a tangle of shadows, its gnarled roots and dripping moss cloaking Kalila Jackson and John Delacroix in a fragile shroud. They crouched low, the damp earth soaking through their clothes, their breaths shallow to avoid betraying their position. The cabin, 200 yards away, glowed faintly through the trees, its lights fractured by the swamp's dense canopy. Kalila's silver bracelet, engraved with the numbers 294813, a gift from her murdered lover, Mason Delacroix, pressed against her wrist, a silent reminder of the evidence now stuffed in her backpack. The Syndicate file, with its ledgers, photographs, and voice recorder, and Mason's letter, a plea for justice from beyond the grave. John's hazel eyes, wide with fear but steady, met hers, his hands trembling as he signed, "They're coming." The rumble of trucks still lingered in the air, Grayson Delacroix's men tearing through the cabin they'd just fled, their pursuit relentless. Kalila's heart hammered, her cop's instincts razor-sharp despite the exhaustion clawing at her. The tunnel, a claustrophobic lifeline hidden beneath the cabin's trapdoor, had bought them moments, but the swamp was no sanctuary. It was a maze, equal parts ally and enemy. She peered through the thicket's brambles, catching glimpses of 3 men in tactical gear, their flashlights slicing the darkness as they fanned out from the cabin. Their voices, low and curt, carried faintly, barking orders to find the bracelet and burn the rest. Kalila's fingers tightened around the backpack, Mason's evidence a burning weight. The anonymous text, "Return the bracelet and files or end like Mason," was no idle threat. These men were here to kill. She scanned their surroundings, her mind racing for a plan. The swamp's terrain was treacherous, muddy pools, tangled vines, and hidden sinkholes. But it was also a canvas for deception. Her eyes landed on a cluster of low branches, their leaves swaying in the faint breeze. "We need a distraction," she whispered, her voice barely audible. John's hands signed. "What kind?" Kalila rummaged through the backpack, her fingers brushing the waterproof case before finding a flare from the cabin's supplies, its red casing cold and heavy. She'd seen Mason use flares in training, their bright arcs drawing attention like moths to flame. "This," she said, holding it up, "we make them chase a ghost." Kalila crept forward, staying low, her boots sinking into the mire. Shibak tied fishing line, another relic from the cabin, to the flare, looping it around a branch 50 yards away. The line was nearly invisible in the dark, its taut pull enough to trigger the flare when yanked. John watched, his hands signing, "Will it work?" Kalila's jaw set, her voice firm. "It has to." She crawled back, trailing the line, and handed John the end. "When I say pull hard," he nodded, his grip steady despite the fear in his eyes. Their escape from the apartment, the journal's revelations, and Mason's letter had forged a bond, a silent pact to see this through. Kalila checked her burner phone, its signal weak but holding. She dialed Captain Maria Torres, Mason's trusted superior, her voice a hushed urgency. "Torres, it's Jackson. We have evidence against Grayson Delacroix, gambling, murder, corruption. He's got men hunting us at these coordinates." She rattled off the cabin's location, her words clipped. Torres's voice crackled through, calm but commanding. "Stay hidden. SWAT's 30 minutes out. Can you hold?" Kalila glanced at the flashlight beams, now closer, their arcs narrowing toward the thicket. "We'll try," she said, ending the call. She tucked the phone away, her hand brushing the bracelet. Mason's fail-safe, now their lifeline. The men were 100 yards off, their movements methodical, closing the net. Kalila's pulse surged, her senses attuned to every rustle, every snap of a twig. She nodded to John, her whisper sharp. "Now!" He yanked the fishing line, the flare igniting with a hiss, its red blaze arcing through the swamp like a comet. The light exploded against the trees, casting eerie shadows and drawing shouts from the men. "Over there!" one barked, their flashlights swinging toward the decoy. The trio bolted toward the flare, their boots splashing through mud, leaving the thicket unguarded. Kalila exhaled, the ruse holding, for now. She motioned John to stay low, her eyes tracking the men's silhouettes. The flare's glow faded, but the swamp's darkness was their ally, swallowing their trail. She checked the backpack, ensuring the evidence, Mason's ledgers, photos, recorder, and letter, was secure. The letter's words echoed in her mind. Trust Torres, expose it. Mason had known the cost, had paid it with his life, and now they carried his torch. John's hand signed, "How long can we hide?" Kalila's voice was grim. "Until SWAT gets here, or until we have to run." Minutes crawled by, each second a battle against the urge to flee. The men's voices grew distant, then circled back, their search resuming with renewed urgency. Kalila's heart sank as a flashlight beam grazed the thicket, its edge catching the glint of her bracelet. She pressed it against her sleeve, cursing the betrayal of light. A man's silhouette loomed closer, his boots crunching just 20 yards away. Kalila's hand slid to her backup pistol, its weight a cold comfort. She signaled John to stay still. Her body coiled, ready to spring if discovered. The swamp's chorus, cicadas, frogs, the rustle of leaves, masked their breaths, but it couldn't hide them forever. Kalila's mind raced, calculating odds. A firefight was suicide. 3 armed men against her single pistol was a losing bet. Her eyes darted to the thicket's edge, where a shallow creek snaked through the mud. It could lead deeper into the swamp, but it risked exposure. She was about to signal a retreat when a faint wail pierced the night. Sirens, distant but growing louder. Torres had come through, SWAT arriving faster than promised. The man froze, his flashlight dropping as the siren swelled. His radio crackled, a voice snapping, "Pull back, feds are inbound." The other 2 shouted, their beams retreating toward the cabin. Kalila's chest loosened, relief flooding her, but she kept low, wary of a trap. The truck's engines roared. To life, their headlights sweeping the clearing as they prepared to flee. Floodlights erupted from the swamp's edge, SWAT units swarming the cabin with military precision. Armored figures fanned out, their shouts cutting through the chaos. "Drop your weapons! Hands up!" Kalila gripped John's arm, her whisper, urgent. "We stay put until it's clear." He nodded, his hands signing, "They got them?" She peered through the brambles, watching as SWAT disarmed 2 of the men, their tactical gear no match for the team's numbers. The third was out of sight, likely racing for the trucks, but the floodlights pinned the clearing like a stage. Kalila's burner phone buzzed. "Torres. Jackson, you safe?" Kalila's voice was steady, though her hands shook. "We're in the thicket, 200 yards east. Evidence is secure." Torres's reply was brisk. "Hold position, we're sweeping the area." The swamp settled into an uneasy quiet, the sirens fading as SWAT secured the cabin. Kalila clutched the backpack, Mason's evidence a lifeline through the chaos. John's hands brushed hers, signing, "We made it." Kalila's smile was grim, her eyes still scanning the darkness. They'd escaped the swamp's jaws, but the fight was far from over, and Mason's truth burned brighter than ever, a beacon they'd carry into the storm ahead. The Atchafalaya Basin pulsed with the aftermath of chaos, its swampy heart illuminated by the harsh glare of SWAT floodlights. Kalila Jackson and John Delacroix emerged from the thicket, their clothes damp with mud. The weight of Mason's evidence heavy in Kalila's backpack, her silver bracelet, engraved with the numbers 294813, a gift from Mason Delacroix, her murdered lover and John's brother, gleamed faintly, a talisman of their survival. The cabin, 200 yards away, was now a secured perimeter, SWAT units swarming, like sentinels around the splintered remains of Grayson Delacroix's pursuit. Two of his men, clad in tactical gear, knelt in cuffs, their flashlights discarded in the mud. The third had vanished into the swamp, but the roar of truck engines had faded, replaced by the crackle of radios and the steady hum of authority. Kalila's pulse still raced, her cop's instincts wary even as relief seeped through her. Captain Maria Torres, a formidable figure in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharper eyes, stood at the cabin's porch, directing her team with clipped precision. Kalila gripped John's arm, guiding him through the uneven terrain, the backpack slung over her shoulder, the Syndicate file, ledgers, photographs, a voice recorder, and Mason's letter, was their lifeline, proof of Grayson's gambling empire and the murder that had shattered their lives. John's hands, trembling but resolute, signed, "Is it over?" Kalila's jaw tightened, her voice low. "Not yet, we need to face him." The swamp's chorus, cicadas, frogs, the rustle of cypress, felt like a held breath, waiting for the storm to break. Torres spotted them, her expression softening for a fleeting moment. "Jackson Delacroix," she called, striding over. "You've got guts, I'll give you that." Her gaze flicked to the backpack, understanding dawning. "The evidence?" Kalila nodded, unzipping the bag to reveal the waterproof case. "Everything?" Mason collected. Ledgers, photos, recordings. "It's enough to bury Grayson and his council cronies." Torres took the case, her hands steady, but her eyes held a flicker of respect. "This'll shake City Hall to its foundations," she said, her voice grim. Mason would be proud. A commotion near the cabin drew their attention. SWAT officers parted, revealing Grayson Delacroix, his tailored suit mud-streaked, his wrists cuffed behind him. His face, once smug with untouchable arrogance, was a mask of fury, his dark eyes glinting like a cornered predator's. Kalila's stomach twisted, the voice from the recorder, "Stage it as a suicide," echoing in her mind. This was the man who'd poisoned John, murdered Mason, and hunted them through the night. John's hands clenched, his signing sharp and raw. "You killed Mason." Grayson's lips curled into a sneer, his voice a low growl. "You should have stayed quiet, cousin. Mason was too nosy just like you." Kalila stepped forward, her voice steel, cutting through the swamp's humid air. "You're finished, Grayson. The Syndicate's done. Every bribe, every rigged bet, every drop of blood. It's all here." She gestured to the case in Torres's hands, her bracelet catching the floodlights, its numbers a silent testament to Mason's foresight. Grayson's eyes narrowed, locking onto the bracelet with a flicker of recognition. "That won't save you," he spat. "You think this ends with me? The council, the money, it's bigger than you can touch." His laugh was cold, a blade in the dark, but Kalila held his gaze unflinching. "We'll touch it," she said, "for Mason." Torres signaled an officer to take Grayson, but he lunged forward, his cuffs rattling, his voice a venomous hiss. "You're playing with fire, detective." Mason thought he could play hero too. The words struck like a blow, Kalila's hand twitching toward her pistol. But Torres's sharp gesture stopped her. "Enough!" the captain barked, nodding to the officer. "Get him out of here!" Grayson was dragged toward a SWAT van, his defiance unbroken, his glare burning into Kalila until the van's doors slammed shut. Kalila's chest heaved, the confrontation leaving her raw. John's hands signed, "He's not sorry." His face was a storm of grief and rage, the loss of his brother a wound reopened by Grayson's taunts. Kalila touched his arm, her voice soft but firm. "He doesn't get to win. We did this for Mason." John nodded, his eyes glistening, the weight of their shared mission anchoring them against the pain. Torres opened the case, her fingers flipping through the ledgers with practiced efficiency. The photographs, Grayson with council members, their deals sealed in smoky rooms, glinted under the floodlights. The voice recorder, its damning audio of Grayson's orders, was the final nail. "This is airtight," Torres said, her tone a mix of admiration and resolve. "We'll need your statements, but this will dismantle his network. Council members, shell companies, the works." She paused, her eyes softening. "You two held up under pressure, most would have cracked." Kalila's fingers brushed the bracelet, its silver warm from her skin. Mason's letter, tucked inside. Her jacket felt like a heartbeat. Trust Torres, expose it. He'd known the cost, had paid it to give them this moment. She handed the bracelet to Torres, its numbers no longer a secret, but a symbol of their victory. "This was his failsafe," she said, her voice steady. "He led us to it." Torres took it, her nod a silent acknowledgement of Mason's sacrifice. The swamp seemed to exhale, its tension easing as SWAT secured the perimeter. The two captured men were loaded into a second van, their radios silent, their mission a failure. The third man, vanished into the swamp, was a loose end, but Torres's team was already combing the area. Kalila's eyes scanned the trees, her instincts still on edge. Grayson's words, "It's bigger than you can touch," gnawed at her, a warning of battles yet to come. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the present, on the evidence now in Torres' hands. John's hands signed, "We did it for him." His voice, though silent, carried a weight that echoed Mason's letter. Kalila nodded, her throat tight. "Yeah, we did." The floodlights cast long shadows, the cabin a scarred witness to their fight. Kalila's gaze lingered on the van holding Grayson, its red taillights fading as it rolled toward justice. Relief mingled with sorrow, Mason's absence a void no victory could fill. She felt John's hand brush hers, a fleeting touch that grounded her. Their shared loss a bond forged in fire. Torres turned to them, her voice cutting through the swamp's hum. "Get some rest. We'll regroup in the city, go over everything. This is just the start." Kalila nodded, the weight of the night settling into her bones. The evidence was secure, Grayson was in custody, and Mason's truth was finally free. But as the first light of dawn crept through the cypress, painting the swamp in shades of gold, Kalila knew the fight wasn't over. Grayson's empire might crumble, but its roots ran deep, and she and John were now its greatest threat. The Atchafalaya Basin stirred under the first light of dawn, its cypress trees draped in mist like mourners at a silent vigil. The cabin, scarred from the night's chaos, stood resolute, its splintered door a testament to the storm Kalila Jackson and John Delacroix had weathered. They sat side by side on the porch, the damp wood creaking beneath them, the swamp's chorus, cicadas fading, frogs croaking, blending with the soft rustle of leaves. Kalila's leather jacket was streaked with mud, her silver bracelet, engraved with the numbers 294813, now tucked inside her sleeve, a quiet relic of Mason Delacroix's sacrifice. John's tailored blazer hung loose, his hazel eyes fixed on the horizon where golden light pierced the fog. The Syndicate evidence, ledgers, photographs, a voice recorder, and Mason's letter was safe with Captain Torres, Grayson Delacroix, in custody, but the air still crackled with the weight of what they'd endured. Kalila's fingers traced the edge of the backpack at her feet, her cop's instincts still taut despite the SWAT van's retreat. The confrontation with Grayson, his venomous taunts, "It's bigger than you can touch," lingered like a bruise. She'd faced down his empire, delivered Mason's truth, but the victory felt hollow, overshadowed by the void of his absence. Mason, her secret lover, John's brother, had orchestrated their path with the bracelet's coordinates, leading them to the cabin, to justice. Yet his letter, now folded inside her jacket, was a bittersweet anchor, its words, "I loved you both," a wound and a promise. She glanced at John, his profile etched against the dawn, and saw the same grief mirrored in his silence. John's hands moved, slow and deliberate, signing, "What now?" The question hung heavy, a crossroads between the fight they'd won and the battles yet to come. Kalila's voice was soft, almost lost in the swamp's hum. "Justice for Mason, trials, testimony. We make sure Grayson's empire falls." Her words were resolute, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. The Syndicate's roots ran deep, its tendrils snaking through New Orleans' power structures. Grayson's arrest was a blow, but his warning gnawed at her, a reminder that their fight was far from over. The swamp glowed, its mist curling like ghosts around the cypress, the dawn painting the trees in hues of amber and gold. Kalila's mind drifted to Mason's letter, his vision of a life without walls, without the compartments that had defined him. He'd hidden her from John, John from her, yet somehow foreseen their union, their strength. She felt the weight of his trust, a mantle she wasn't sure she could carry. John's hand signed again, his expression raw. And us? I want to find out what we could be. The words, though silent, struck like a spark, igniting a warmth she hadn't dared acknowledge. Kalila's breath caught, her gaze meeting his. In the chaos of the night, fleeing through tunnels, rigging flares, facing Grayson, she'd seen John's resilience, his quiet courage. He wasn't Mason with his restless intensity, but he carried a steadiness, a sincerity that grounded her. The swamp's light caught his eyes, their hazel depths reflecting the dawn, and for a moment the world narrowed to just them. I want that too, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, a confession as much to herself as to him. She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining, the touch a lifeline through the grief and danger that had bound them. The cabin's porch, rough and weathered, felt like a sanctuary, its creaks a soft counterpoint to the swamp's awakening. Kalila's thoughts swirled, Mason's secrets, Grayson's threats, the evidence now in Torres's hands. The ledgers detailed millions laundered through shell companies, the photographs captured corrupt council members, and the recorder held Grayson's chilling orders, stage it as a suicide. Each piece was a brick in the wall of justice they'd built, but Kalila knew the Syndicate's shadow loomed larger. She squeezed John's hand, drawing strength from his presence, their shared loss forging a bond deeper than words. John's hands released hers, signing with a tenderness that belied the night's violence. Mason wanted this, us, together, fighting for him. Kalila nodded, her throat tight. The letter had been a map, not just to the cabin but to this moment, a chance to heal the fractures Mason had left behind. She pulled it from her jacket, unfolding. The creased pages, his handwriting a lifeline across the void. Trust Torres, expose it. They'd done that, but the cost, Mason's life, their safety, hung heavy. Kalila's fingers brushed the bracelet's hiding place, its numbers no longer a secret, but a symbol of their survival, of Mason's love. The swamp's mist began to lift, revealing the cypress in stark relief, their roots twisting into the earth like veins. Kalila's cop instincts flared, her eyes scanning the tree line for lingering threats. The third man, Grayson's fugitive, was still out there, a specter in the swamp. Torres' team was sweeping the area, but the basin was vast, its secrets impenetrable. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the dawn, its light a fragile promise of hope. John's hand signed, "He's with us, isn't he?" Kalila's smile was faint, tinged with sorrow. "Yeah, he's here." Their silence stretched, comfortable yet charged, the swamp's hum a backdrop to their unspoken vows. Kalila felt the pull of the future, trials, testimony, the unraveling of the Syndicate, but also the pull of this moment, of John's hand in hers, of a life Mason had dreamed for them. She leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his, the contact grounding her in the present. The dawn's gold deepened, painting the cabin in warmth, and for the first time since Mason's death, Kalila felt a flicker of possibility, a chance to build something new from the ashes of loss. John turned to her, his hand signing, "We'll face it together?" The question was a pledge, a bridge from their shared pain to an uncharted horizon. Kalila's eyes held his, her voice steady. "Together." She leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both an ending and a beginning, a seal on the promise they'd made to Mason, to each other. The swamp bore witness, its ancient heart beating in time with theirs, the dawn a canvas for their resolve. The cabin stood silent, its scars a map of their fight. The porch, a fleeting haven before the world reclaimed them. Kalila pulled back, her hand still in John's. The bracelet's weight a reminder of the path they'd walked. Grayson was cuffed, the evidence secure, but the Syndicate's shadow loomed, its roots waiting to ensnare them. As the sun climbed, burning away the mist, Kalila knew they'd face it all. Justice, danger, love. With the strength Mason had seen in them, a strength they were only beginning to understand. The Atchafalaya Basin glowed under the rising sun, its cypress trees catching the dawn's amber light, their twisted roots sinking into the swamp's secrets. The cabin, battered from the night's violence, stood resolute, its porch a fleeting haven where Kalila Jackson and John Delacroix had forged a bond amidst grief. Kalila leaned against the SUV, her leather jacket mud-streaked, her fingers tracing the empty space where her silver bracelet, engraved with 294813, Mason Delacroix's final gift, had rested. She'd given it to Captain Torres, along with the Syndicate evidence, ledgers, photographs, a voice recorder, and Mason's letter. John stood nearby, his tailored blazer rumpled, his hazel eyes fixed on the horizon, exhaustion and resolve etched into his face. The swamp's hum, frogs croaking, leaves rustling, was a quiet elegy for the chaos they'd survived. Kalila's backpack sat at her feet, lighter without the evidence, but Mason's absence weighed heavier. His letter, tucked inside her jacket, burned with his words, "I loved you both." Grayson Delacroix was in custody, his gambling empire exposed, but the victory was bittersweet, shadowed by Mason's murder, staged as a suicide to silence his probe. Kalila's cop instincts buzzed, wary of the Syndicate's lingering reach, the third man still loose in the swamp. She glanced at John, his presence a steady anchor, their shared loss a bond forged in fire. Torres approached from the cabin, her steel-gray hair glinting, her sharp eyes softening. "You've done what most couldn't," she said, her voice firm yet warm. "The Syndicate evidence will dismantle Grayson's network, council members, shell companies, murder. You'll testify, but this is airtight." Kalila nodded, her throat tight. "Mason planned it," she said. "The bracelet, the cabin, the letter, he knew we'd finish it." Torres handed her a burner phone. "Stay reachable. Grayson's cuffed, but his kind played dirty." Kalila took it, the warning echoing Grayson's taunts. John's hands signed, steady despite his fatigue. "We'll be ready." His eyes met Kalila's, a vow sealed in the dawn's light. The night's terror, tunnels, flares, Grayson's sneer, had forged them into allies, now something more. Kalila's mind flashed to Mason's letter, his dream of a life without walls, a dream he'd entrusted to them. She felt its pull, a fragile hope blooming beside her grief, John's warmth making it real. Kalila opened the SUV's door, the keys glinting. "City's waiting," she said, her voice resolute. New Orleans loomed, a city of jazz and shadows, where her Miami sting and John's lake and flame awaited. John's hands signed, a faint smile breaking through. "Stay in the city." The question was a lifeline, a step toward their shared future. Kalila grinned, a spark of light in the dark. "Miami sting, but I'll be back. You owe me dinner." John's silent laugh warmed her, echoing their first meal at Bayou Bistro, where her signs had bridged his silence. She started the engine, the SUV rumbling as they pulled onto the dirt track. The swamp unfolded, its cypress glowing, the dawn of fierce gold. Kalila's thoughts drifted to Mason, his intense eyes, his rare smiles, lost to the Syndicate's greed. The bracelet was gone, but its numbers lived in her memory, a map to this moment. John carried the same weight, his love for his brother mirrored in her own. Mason's letter had united them, a gift of justice and connection. The track merged with asphalt, the basin fading as the highway stretched toward New Orleans. Kalila's grip tightened, the skyline a distant promise. Grayson's empire would fall, but its roots lingered, a battle for another day. She reached for John's hand, their fingers lacing together, a spark in the morning's light. His hands signed, For Mason and us, Kalila's voice was firm. Together. The city gleamed, a battleground and home where their promise, forged in loss, sealed in dawn, would guide them through the fight ahead. What a journey through the heart of New Orleans' shadows. Kalila and John's fight for Mason's justice has left us breathless. Did their courage and bond move you? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what stirred your heart. A huge thank you for joining us in this tale of secrets and redemption. Don't miss our next story. Subscribe. Now and let's meet again for more thrilling adventures.